is going to be for taking off more material. This is for taking off smaller amounts of material. So if you have a really thick pot at the bottom, you probably want to use this first and then use this. But for most of the stuff I trim, I'm going to use just this one. I also have my damp sponge so that I can clean up the bottom when I'm done. So on this is set up for trimming pots that you make that are round. If you alter the shape, it's better to trim them on your wheel, because this uses 3 points in which to hold your pot in place. So it's difficult if it's squared off or if it's in a regular shape for this to kind of grasp it and keep it centered. So you always want to use this when it's round. So the way this works is I'm going to check the thickness of my pot. I have a little bit of thickness in here. I want to create that nice ring around the bottom of my pot so that it rests up off the surface. But I'm going to set this upside down, and then these pads that are on here are reversible. So if I have a pretty shallow pot, like a lid for something, or a mug that's pretty set, I can take these and I can put them so that I can flip them around so that the pads are on the inside, and I can just turn this and it will center my pot in the middle so that I know it's centered and I don't have to do the work for that. If I have something that's taller, I want to support it a little bit higher up. So I'm just going to take these out to the end, flip them around, and they have these small holes in them, and those holes are for these rods. Now the rods will slide into the hole, and then there's a pad on top that will rest against the pot. There's different sizes of posts and pads, so I'm just going to use the shortest ones because that'll move my points of contact up onto the pot just a little bit more. So I'm going to place those in, and then I'm just going to turn it the same way. And it's going to kind of pull my pot into center. Again, I want to make sure my pot is leather hard. So on the bottom, if I touch the bottom and I run my finger along the bottom with minimal pressure, I shouldn't make any marks or move the clay. It'll smooth a little bit, but I'm not really manipulating the clay in any way. So once this is centered and it's in there securely, I can't really twist it. Then I want to move my support bar in place. So on the side here, there's this knob. I want to loosen it just a little bit so that I can pull this up and swing it in close to my pot, and then tighten this so that I can use this to rest my hand on while the pot is spinning. Make sure it's back far enough that you're not going to gouge your pot out. Now you're ready to start trimming. So I'm going to use again my smaller loop tool. I'm going to start turning this, and then there's a bar by my left foot that I use to make the wheel spin. Holding my trimming tool securely in one hand, I'm still going to keep a second hand on the pot, and I'm going to start to create the foot. And I know where I want to go with this before I start. It's not a guessing game as I go. I want this little platform on the bottom. So I'm trimming kind of a little blindly, but I spent time looking at it and planning it out before I got onto the wheel here. So I just want to blend this out and make sure the edge of my pot is nice and clean with the bottom where I want it. Then on the top, I'm going to mark where I want my foot ring to be. And I'm going to slowly take out small amounts of material from the middle, working my way outward. And again, when your pot is leather hard and perfect for trimming, you'll get these large ribbons of clay that come off. If it's too dry, it'll just come off in shavings and create a lot of dust, which we want to avoid. If it's too wet, your trimmings will bunch up on your trimming tool, and it'll be very hard to trim. The other issue with trimming when it's too wet is the clay may have a tendency to grab your trimming tool and pull it into the clay deeper, so you actually end up gouging out more clay than you want to. I'm just going to clean up my edges so that it's the shape that I want, and then using the long edge of the long side of my trimming tool, I'm going to turn it sideways, make sure it's clean. I'm just going to take a little bit off this top of my foot so that I know that it's even and flat. Then I can take my damp sponge and just run it on the surface, and it just wets the surface enough that I can use my finger to fill in any of the scratches that I would have made from dragging the grog with my trimming tool. Remember, grog is the large sandy pieces that are in our clay, and in order to make our clay smooth, we really want to push those down below the surface. So I just dampen the surface with the sponge and then use my finger. The very bottom of your foot ring we will eventually sand once your pot has been fired, so you don't need to worry about making that perfectly smooth. You just want to get rid of those scratch marks. And now this is ready to get a handle.